A very good afternoon to our audience across Europe, the United Kingdom, and beyond, wherever you are. I'd like to welcome you to Emerging Europe and the United Kingdom towards 2030, another in a series of events discussing future relations between emerging Europe and key global markets. My name is Andrew Robel, and I am the founding partner of Emerging Europe, an independent London-based intelligence, news, and community platform whose mission is to contribute to the social, economic, and democratic development of the emerging Europe region by encouraging and promoting entrepreneurship, innovation, and sustainability. Emerging Europe needs to continue to be more visible on the global stage, and our organization helps by shining light on this fantastic region and the unlimited opportunities it actually offers through our various programs. Towards 2030, the future of emerging Europe and our awards, the Tech Emerging Europe Advocates community, our reports, and our news site, which is the primary source of information for over 2 million readers globally, frequently referred to by international media and research organizations. Today, we are delighted to be able to bring the United Kingdom, the country in which we are based, a little closer to emerging Europe to jointly explore opportunities and share experiences. Over the last couple of months, we have been running a survey among diplomats, expert analysts, and business people familiar with the UK and the region, asking them about the factors that they feel will have the biggest impact on the political and economic relationship between emerging Europe and the United Kingdom over the next decade. Across the board, respondents believe the COVID pandemic and climate change will have an impact on those future relations. As far as the UK is concerned, its relations with the European Union and London's future as a financial center will be a key issue. In emerging Europe, close collaboration among all the countries in the region is seen as the most important element in strengthening the region's relations with the UK. Technology, innovation, and digital transformation will be the main drivers of collaboration between the region and the UK, followed by health and life sciences, infrastructure, and engineering. Over 80% of all respondents believe the UK will try to attract the best talent from emerging Europe within the next 10 years. The vast majority of respondents are also certain trade and investment will continue moving both ways. The UK left the European Union at the end of January last year and ended the transition period 2.5 months ago. It is now a year after we first entered lockdown, and despite the vaccine, we are now going through the third wave of COVID. And one of our speakers, Marek Dietl, the CEO of the Warsaw Stock Exchange, our partner, couldn't join us today because of COVID. Today, however, we'd like to discuss the future of emerging Europe and the UK post-Brexit and post-COVID. Later, we will take a deeper dive into tech and innovation and focus on fintech. And finally, in the third session, health tech. The findings of all these discussions, as well as the full results of the survey, will be released in the report in April. What's most important is that we take these findings on board and look to implement the changes they suggest together. In the meantime, I would like to thank our numerous institutional and media partners, PwC, our partner across the region that has been working with us for the last 4 years, and our strategic partner, the Warsaw Stock Exchange, the biggest exchange in Central and Eastern Europe. We are very proud to have these inspiring organizations on board. Today, I wish you a similarly inspiring time with Emerging Europe, making new connections, finding new opportunities, and hearing a lot of great new ideas for collaboration and partnership. I will now hand over to Kasia Madera, a news presenter at the BBC, and her panelists representing the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, PricewaterhouseCoopers in Central and Eastern Europe, the British Chambers of Commerce, the Economist Intelligence Unit, and the last but not least, the Development Bank of Poland, BGK. Kasia, over to you.
Andrew, thank you so much. It's so lovely to be here with you once again for this really important conference. Firstly, a huge thank you to all the Emerging Europe team, Andrew, Emiliano, all the guys working in the background to bring this together because it's so crucially important. And as Andrew touched upon, I'm a BBC World News presenter. We have around 123 million viewers worldwide. our reach is phenomenal. And I don't need to tell you guys that the main focus of our stories this year has, of course, been the pandemic. We all thought it was going to be Brexit, but, well, the bigger story came in and just shook our world. It's been extraordinary. So I know that today we're going to be talking beyond Brexit and COVID, and we'll be looking at the opportunities and challenges for future collaboration between emerging Europe and the United Kingdom. But there's a lot still that we need to discuss, focusing on the relationship between the UK, the EU right now as well. So I'm really pleased. I've got such a formidable panel with me today who have given up their time and their expertise to be with us. So thank you so much to Anne-Marie Martin, the Director of Global Business Networks at the British Chambers of Commerce, Joan Hoey, the Director for Europe at the Economist Intelligence Unit, Mam Fatou Dianya, Head of Division County Studies, Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development, Agnieszka Gajewska, Partner at PwC, and Mateusz Walewski, the Chief Economist at the BGK, the State Development Bank of Poland. And Mateusz, a big thank you for stepping in at short notice. We do wish Marek all the best, and it just goes to show how COVID is something that touches so many of us, and it's something that we are working through and dealing with. Now, when we talk about the UK's relationship throwing forward to 2030, there's a lot to discuss, but I just want to focus on just the immediate situation that we've got right now. And Jane, I'm going to open this up with you because I know that you want to talk about whether the UK has a role to play now that it's no longer in the EU, how that will affect its relationship with emerging European countries. But when we see the toing and throwing, the arguments that we're seeing over the vaccination programme, what we saw earlier on in January with the European Union invoking Article 16 of the Northern Ireland Protocol, it's a fractious relationship that we're seeing at the moment. To look forward, we've got to get over what we're seeing right now. Can we, Joan?
Well, I certainly hope so, because it is quite disturbing, and fractious is maybe you're using a British understatement there, because it's become more than that probably now. So I think, yes, there's a lot of fallout here from what's happened over the past few years since Brexit. You know, there's a certain kind of poisoning of the relationship, despite attempts on both sides to keep it on civil terms. But yes, it is disturbing, and I hope that we can get through this. The whole row with Oxford AstraZeneca, the supply problems, and all the rest of it. I hope that, you know, on both sides there'll be the goodwill to do that, because of course the vaccine rollout is crucial for the recovery for all of us in the EU and the wider Europe region, and indeed the world. So I hope that countries such as the UK that are doing very well on the vaccine rollout, once we've got to a certain stage and we've vaccinated all our over 50s, actually, that we can start to do more, you know, to help others in the EU and beyond that, where, you know, we have older generations who are still at risk and still not being vaccinated. So yeah, I hope that goodwill can get us through this initial period. I don't know if you want me to talk about how I see the period beyond this, Kasia, or whether you want to come back to that.
Well, let's come back to that. Let's just open this out a little bit to the rest of the panel as well. Mam Fatou Dianya, we heard there Joan talking about a fractious relationship and the kind of responsibility, I guess, that countries have to other countries. In your view, you focus on country studies as part of the Organisation for Economic Cooperation and Development. When it comes to economic cooperation, that keyword cooperation, how does one achieve it in a world where we are increasingly, our societal outlook is more isolationist? We're looking more insular in a way, I guess, post the Trump era as well.
Yeah, well, actually, you put it very well. In a way, when I was thinking about the issues that you just raised, we looked at what to expect in the next few years for countries in the EU, for the UK, for OECD members generally, as the UK would exit the single market. And you mentioned cooperation, and I think it's a very important point, because the two main channels that we see really for reduced trade, for reduced growth coming out of the recent developments is, one, the end of the free movement of people between the UK and the EU and the rest of the EU now, and two, the regulatory, what we call regulatory divergence, meaning that regulations are going to move apart, to diverge between the UK and the EU countries. And both are important because they actually, not so much because of what we hear so much about the goods being moving less easily and so on, but more because with the free movement of people, you also have exchange of ideas, of knowledge, of business practices, linkages between firms that go beyond just the actual import of labor, if you want to put it that way. And so that's one thing on this free movement of people, that it can have repercussions on productivity growth, on the circulation of ideas, on innovation, and also on the divergence that it has caused, not just for actually firms having to comply with different regulations, but also just the cost of verifying compliance, of making sure one is compliant, which can actually be quite a burden on smaller firms or on entrepreneurs who want to get started and maybe don't have as many means as larger enterprises. So those are two key issues in our view, and they are risks, but there are also opportunities related to that. Because I mean, maybe we may come back to that over the course of the discussion, but we could also think of how cooperation in these areas, movement of people, regulatory convergence can actually help entrepreneurs, especially in high-tech industries, in fintech, in ICT industries, which really, you know, talking to people in Warsaw, in Prague, in Budapest, you hear some of these returnees telling you that actually, you know, they not only got funding out of their experience in the UK, but also business contacts, which really helped them to get started. So I think these are really two areas in which there could be more cooperation going forward.
And I think that actually, Manfatu, thank you. That leads us very nicely on to Anne-Marie, if I can pick up with you some of those points made, the questions of compliance, regulation, convergence. These are real life issues that I'm sure you're hearing concerns about from your members.
Hello. Yes, absolutely. I think the general consensus is that the new trading relationship is, you know, it's a good platform to build on, but there's still a lot of work to do. And some of the impact trackers surveys that we've been launching into our network for the last few months have demonstrated that it's very challenging out there for business, and actually export numbers are down. We're not the only organization saying this. We've got the new ONS figures as well that are demonstrating exactly the same thing. So I think lots of challenges ahead. I suppose my concern would be that this latest disagreement, shall we put it politely, in terms of the vaccine situation, is almost diverting attention from the need to continue those discussions. And I'm sure it's all happening in the background, but it just feels that you know, COVID is all consuming, and we see that it needs to be all consuming, but there is the other side that still needs to be resolved. And you know, there's a whole area of sort of, you know, negotiations around services in the future, etc., which you've touched upon. So I think it's almost like, let's get back to the table and continue those discussions and try and move that forward. I'm a bit of an eternal optimist, or at least I thought I was up till about sort of January 1st this year anyway. And in terms of our own network, we have presence literally across the world. And what we have experienced for the last year is that actually, despite the challenges, which we all know are unprecedented, actually there's been a huge amount of positivity too, with sort of lots of new ideas, developments, achievements, and this extraordinary spirit of mutuality and entrepreneurship. So we've seen businesses, particularly sort of within the British business network across the world, we've seen businesses sort of communities being at the forefront of supporting other markets around the world that are at different stages of the curve in terms of the impact of the pandemic. So, very early on, we were seeing that our colleagues in China, South Korea, etc., were with their members actually coming onto virtual meetings and roundtables and events with our UK colleagues and our European colleagues and other parts of the world, these are people who had been about 12 weeks ahead of us in terms of experience. So we were able to create this platform where there was so much exchange of information that the companies in the network further down the line were able to learn from that group. So there's been an enormous amount achieved as well. And I think that there is a risk that we always forget that because of what we always read about and we talk about all the time.
It's those pesky news people, isn't it, that always spin there. You don't sell good.
Kasia, I didn't say
it. Thank you. We're all being terribly polite. Let's call it out. It's why I wanted to bring up the elephant in the room, because when it comes to the discussion, shall we put it, between the EU and the UK right now, it is concerning. Of course it is, and it's dominating our papers. But I want to pick up on the positivity, Anne-Marie, that you laid there. Agnieszka, you're looking at across a wide region, and I know you've been looking specifically at sustainability, and I wonder if that kind of communication and working together, whether you're seeing that across nations in terms of looking forward and looking at sustainability, and the idea that countries do need to actually work together if this is something that we're going to move forward in the future.
Sure, Kasia. Of course, it is. It is a positive, I would say, story. We all talking right now about not only building back, but building better. The leaders of today's world are talking about, new Bretton Woods moment, as Kristalina Georgieva, the head of IMF, another leader from this part of the world, said that right now as a community, as a humankind, we are facing this new Bretton Woods moment, and my thinking is this is precisely how we want to see the world going forward. The pandemic is a very disturbing situation, and it might not feel this way, but sooner, probably, hopefully, rather than later, the situation will move for better. And clearly, we need to think how to move forward and how to build better, not only to build back. When we're talking about, especially the UK and emerging Europe cooperation, I see at least two areas in the sustainability space. One is the obvious one. We are going to have COP26 this year. It is going to be hosted in Glasgow. So it's almost like, per definition, UK is in the discussions and has the role to play here. I'm seeing from various points from the various countries around our region that the UK diplomacy is trying to play the role here, and I think absolutely, given where the UK as an economy wants to go, it has a role to play. And I think this is very much close to the second point I wanted to cover on sustainability and the UK role. The fact that the UK pledges right now to reduce its greenhouse emissions by 68% by 2030, which is by far the fastest rate of reduction from the major economies. also gives us like, some sort of touching point as it comes to where I believe the UK can play a role and can be leading our countries going forward. This 10 points plan that Boris Johnson put forward as a, UK going into the almost like green revolution, talking about the clean energy, about innovative technologies. This is all something that definitely is bringing much needed innovation as it comes to our countries. An interesting point here, and of course we cannot forget that a part of our countries are members of the EU. 11 of our countries are members of the EU. Some of our countries are very close, either cooperating or tending to the EU. We have a huge European Green Deal, yes, and probably if you ask the average Pole or Romanian in the street how they feel about sustainability, who is the main driver in sustainability, they will probably talk about Ursula von der Leyen more than Boris Johnson. So because the funding that is coming to the European Union in connection to the Green Deal is going to be a huge one. Yes, we're talking about 1.1 trillion euro by 2030, quite a sizable number. And also, all these conversations is around the digital and green economy. I think this will drive European agenda. This will also drive the agendas, hopefully, in our countries. But nevertheless, being a great enthusiast of UK role in development of our economies, I think, especially in these areas of innovative technologies in sustainability, definitely the UK has a role to play. And I'm very much looking forward to see how the COP26 in Glasgow will play out, and how is it going to impact our countries as well.
There's a lot of excitement here, I have to say, Agnieszka, when it comes to what's going to happen in Glasgow. Absolutely. And thank you for bringing that up. We're getting questions in, and I'm going to pose them from the audience in just a moment. So keep those coming in. But let's just get your thoughts, initial thoughts, Mateusz, because, of course, yeah, the UK has historically had a close relationship with Poland, and they've been allied in the EU historically previously. That's all, of course, changing with the post-Brexit. But talk us through the kind of initiatives that Poland's now involved in terms of the regional area. I know you're quite keen to speak about the 3 Cs initiative.
Yes, because I think it's maybe not about the initiative as such, because it's quite the old project. It's like 2 or 3 years old, but obviously it's still existing and it's still evolving. I mean, it has the long history relative to the initiative I want to speak about, because we just started as a bank. We started to build a financial arm, I would say, of the 3 Cs initiative. It's 3 Cs fund, and we just started building it just as the COVID pandemic started. So it, if you want to start some cooperation, especially if the history of this cooperation is not very, I would say, vivid before then, it's quite hard to start it just when the pandemic starts, and you cannot fly anywhere. You have to meet digitally only and online, and it's really hard. But somehow we managed, and there is a 3 Cs fund, which is quite a big success. It's built. It has been built by 2 banks of our region, Polish BGK and the Romanian Exim Bank, and others also joined, Estonians, and now there are already 8 members of the fund, and all the other countries of the 3 Cs initiative, which are 12 of them, also declared to join the fund. And I think this is something very important, and this is something that can, in fact, also strengthen the relations between our region and UK, because the main goal of the fund is to attract private institutional investors to infrastructural investments in our region. Speaking about infrastructure investments, I mean mainly energy, I mean transport, and I mean digital security. So these are the main 3 areas the fund will work on, And as you probably know, some of you may know, UK is a leader in the projects of public-private partnership, and is a leader in attracting private investments to infrastructure investment in. It used to be in EU, but now it's in Europe. Yes, so I think there's a lot we as the fund, if I can say like that, can learn from UK and really hope for fruitful cooperation with British institutions. And I think it's not a coincidence that BGK is just I would say it's very much emerging part of emerging Europe, and we are just we are putting strong pressure on developing our international relations. Okay. Sorry. Maybe it's because of COVID. I just found out today that I have to be on self-isolation because I just met 2 days ago the person who just been tested positive today in the morning. So maybe I'm already have some first symptoms and I'm not able to say some complicated words, but okay, well, I hope not. But anyway, I wouldn't say it's coincidence that already knowing about Brexit, we opened our first two international offices in Brussels, which is obvious, and then in London as the center of financial global life, I would say. So I hope this London office of ours will have a lot of work, especially as far as cooperation with Free Seas Fund is concerned.
Okay, well, listen, we hope you're well, and it's nice to see that the track and trace system is working there. So that's always a positive. But hopefully it's just a precautionary measure. And our thoughts also go to Marek. We've got one question from Harold coming in already, and it's quite specific. It's regarding the ONS figures that we had for this country, the UK. And Anne-Marie, I'm going to put this straight away to you. It's about UK exports to the EU dropping by 40.7%, nearly 41%. And Harold asked the $1 million question, is it COVID or is it Brexit? Is it both? And what about a recovery?
So mean.
It's so mean, isn't it? But
I'm really not impressed with that question at all.
We'll never know, will we, really?
Yeah, it's impossible to decipher. Of course, there are huge challenges moving goods across borders, lots of bureaucracy. Is it teething problems? That's the other age-old debate. Is it the new way of working, or is it teething problems around that? Is it lack of preparedness and not enough time to get sort of everyone's act together? I think it's going to be really difficult to decipher that, quite frankly, at this time, just because there's so much going on. What I would say, though, is from my experience, because a big part of my role is around how do we drive trade between the markets where we have a presence and the UK. And for the last year, it's actually been quite challenging to get the bandwidth around international trade. And trade facilitation, yes, high on the agenda, but the whole idea of, sort of export promotion, trade promotion, investment promotion, there is a real appetite around the world to get going on that, but actually the bandwidth for businesses within the UK has been quite limited, because many of them, particularly in our network, which are predominantly, I think it's 90% SMEs within the UK network, which is slightly different to the international chambers, British chambers, is that, the challenges have been about staying alive, quite frankly. So it would be, if I had a crystal ball, the first question I would ask is, when could we move to that sort of opportunities discussion? And I think every time we start it, there's another wave, and then it kind of throws everything off track again. So let's see, you're hearing about European sort of third waves coming up. I think Andrew mentioned a little bit earlier about sort of lockdown in Poland. So I think this is just, until this is over, it's going to be very difficult to get those numbers back on anywhere near the level that they were before.
Yeah, I think it's something that we've been struggling with to work out as well. So we'll keep it on the back burner, because I'm sure it will come up. But
can I just jump in? Sorry,
yeah,
Kasia,
go on.
Just
a
very quick point, just to add to what Anne-Marie said. I think it's just going to take some time, actually, to see how trade is really going to be affected, because I think what we saw happening, there was a lot of stockpiling went on because there was so much uncertainty in the run up to the end of December. Nobody knew whether the deal was actually going to materialize or not. I mean, it was our call that it would, and it's obviously a rather modest deal, but nevertheless, it's important that it did so. But there was so much uncertainty, so there was really a lot of stockpiling. So that's inevitably going to have an impact. And obviously, everybody would have expected that there would be disruption in the initial phases, and that will continue for some time. And then there's on top of that the COVID effect as well. So I think it's difficult to disentangle all those things, but I don't think we can make really hard judgments on the basis of those initial figures.
So it's something that we're going to have to come back to in the longer term. But Harold, thank you for your question. Mean as it was, but it certainly got the economists thinking. It's good of you to share it with us, and please do keep more questions coming in. Mamfatou, I want to come back to you, and if you could just. You were nodding when Anne-Marie was talking there, so I'm assuming there are some elements that you want to pick up on with what she was saying, because there's so much to cover but so little time. But just reflect back on some of what she was saying.
Yeah, so I mean, today we're talking about the countries in Central and Eastern Europe, and indeed, it's very difficult to say anything about the short term, and it's very hard to make sense really of the month-to-month numbers that we are getting now. In our analysis, taking a more long-run, medium-run view, our estimate was actually that exports of the UK would decline by would be lower, let's say, by 6%. Over the medium term compared to what it would have been without the exit from the single market, and imports declining by about 8%. Those are very uncertain numbers, but I think that the more interesting question is more, what does that mean for the relationship with the countries in the region? And for the countries in the region, in fact, if you just look at their trade linkages with the UK, the expected impact is rather small. In any event, it is much smaller than what it is for countries in the EU that have stronger ties with the UK, like, of course, Ireland or the Netherlands or Denmark. And but even within the countries in the region, you see a difference between, let's say, the likes of Hungary, Slovenia, Poland, where in some sectors it could have significant impacts, and other countries where the expected impact is really small, such as the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Romania, Bulgaria. So in the region, there are differences. There are differences also by sector. In particular, one sector that is really key for some countries is the automotive industry, where again the linkages with the UK are smaller than, let's say, for Germany, for example, to name just one. And so it's perhaps, as Anne-Marie was saying, the discussion, we all know about the risks. But maybe the more practical question is to think more about what are the opportunities and what can be done now that we are at this stage, really to help the countries move forward and to deepen the trade ties that would have had to be developed anyways, even outside the COVID and outside the Brexit.
I know it's and the amount of times that I've said it's an unprecedented situation, but yes, that's good. Mateusz, absolutely pick up on that, please.
Yeah, just one short remark to what Mama said. It's not so easy to say that we don't have strong relations with trade relations with UK. You mentioned the automotive sector. We have very strong relations to UK through Germany in the automotive sector, especially Czech Republic and Slovakia. Whenever there are German value chains, part of that goes to UK. So we cannot assess the potential effect without looking at this not direct linkages. So I would be a little bit more worried about the automotive sector in our region than you are. But obviously, I'm sure that everything will come back. I think it's going to be short-term effect. In fact, I think that, you know, that even after the short breaks, the trade ties will come back, because it's simply the economic need, and we all have to cooperate and we have to trade with each other. Nevertheless, we are part of the same free market zone or not.
Well, you say that, and Mateusz, let's get Agnieszka in on this, because Agnieszka, I know you've been looking at trade as well. Manfasu was talking about, we know the risks, but let's look at the positivities. And Mateusz is saying we all have to trade together. We've got to cooperate. But even today, with what we're seeing is people are not cooperating. So how do you advise going forward, especially in line with the work that you've been doing?
It's another $1 million question, or it can be even £1 million question, I must tell you, and a very interesting one. I fully agree with Mom of what said about things looking not as bad as we thought they could have looked. But I'm more interested, and I fully agree with Mateusz that things will come back because we need to cooperate. What interests me much more is this, let's say, towards 2030 perspective, what Andrew was referring to, because I'm seeing almost like two different perceptions in the market. When you look at the facts, there were like lots of good things going on over the last couple of months. We have a free trade deal with Ukraine. We have the same one with Albania, the one that are being negotiated in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in Serbia, with Montenegro. So I think these things are happening. And if you look, for example, I had like a closer look at what is going on in Ukraine. Some of the measurements that have been proposed in the UK free trade deal are really interesting. So you have like the 2.5 billion pounds export credit. It's quite a big number, and when you think about what kind of investments are needed in Ukraine, and also the conditions of the specific facility, is an interesting one. So I think lots of really good things happened, and this is like one part of the equation. Another part of the equation, and the question that I'm being asked many times is, what is the long-term game for the UK? Because we especially, something that comes very often to my mind is this Indo-Pacific tilt. So, that the UK will be looking for the markets which have much higher growth potential than Central and Eastern Europe, let's put it this way. And is it going to be the case that after 30 years of UK and this part of the world being very close, UK might be looking at very different markets, which potentially has much higher growth potential? And I think this is a very interesting topic for me. I looked yesterday, preparing also for this specific for our conversation today, in the integrated review that was published pretty much yesterday, so very fresh thing, saying that the UK will remain one of the world's most open economies. Yes, and it is like lots of stuff behind it, what it really does mean, and so on and so forth. The £1 million question for me is how the UK is looking right now at our part of the world, and is it really the risk? But at least I see it, and it is like the perception I'm hearing from many of our clients, public and private, is where does our region really stand as it comes to the 10 years perspective for the UK development going forward? And I think this is something that we try to understand. I think the short term, clearly, we will continue working together. My real question, and something that I would love to discuss, is how strategic and if this part of the world will remain as a strategic partner for the UK in comparison to other emerging markets.
Well, that is an excellent question. And I'm just looking at the clock. We've only got about 5 minutes left. So I'm going to bring in final thoughts, but picking up on what Agnieszka was saying, Jane, putting you on the spot rather with this one. But yes, the UK has been building relations with various different areas of the world when it comes to its post European Union membership. So how does it see emerging European countries, given that we are also looking towards the US, we're looking towards towards China, of course, and we were talking about that potential Australia deal that was at one point being discussed as something that was quite logistic, even though Australia's on the other side of the world. So how do we see our neighbours?
Yeah, very important question. I was also reading the report, 114 pages yesterday as well. Really interesting, but obviously it doesn't, well, it sets out a whole kind of framework for post-Brexit foreign security defence relations. It doesn't go into detail in terms of areas, so it obviously has a lot of emphasis on the kind of new geopolitical world that we're in, multipolar, and talks a lot about this tilt towards the Indo-Pacific and so on, but with the emphasis on global Britain. But it does emphasize that the wider Europe region will remain important for the UK. And actually, I think maybe counterintuitively or ironically, I think that Brexit actually could be a very positive for UK's relations with the wider Eastern Europe region, beyond the EU 11, I'm talking about Western Balkans, and beyond that to former Soviet space as well, CIS countries. And I think we're already starting to see that. So obviously it's going to, I think it's a very legitimate question. Is the UK interested actually in changing things? And the whole point of Brexit is to do something different. And I actually think that it frees up the UK to do more, because to be honest, the UK always played second or even third fiddle to Germany and Brussels in this relationship as long as it was a member. And it was a kind of, if you like, maybe, don't want to say neglect or benign neglect, but because of the accession process and the predominance of that relationship with the EU and Brussels, the UK kind of tended not to be too active. I think we're going to see much more active engagement with the region, and that's because trade and free trade deals are being put front and centre now of UK policy. So I think we're going to see a lot more of these sorts of deals that we've seen with Albania and Ukraine and so on. And relations are going to be bilateral, and that means that diplomatically and in other ways, the UK has to be more engaged. It will also engage with the region, through multilateral ways as well, and through NATO and its G7, G20, all the other ways in which it does already. But I think we will see a really positive change, and the merging of the FCO and DFID, Department for International Development, is an interesting one. It's a statement of intent. It means, I think, that the way in which the whole aid agenda is going to be pursued will be different, and we will hopefully see that back to 0.7% of GDP. And I think a lot of that money will be focused on this region, the wider Europe region. I think what the UK has to do, and I hope it will do, is exploit its strengths in the air and give support in the areas where it's most needed, particularly for the less developed countries in this region. So in terms of institutional reform, the UK has really got a lot to offer there. In terms of the business environment and its business model, there's a lot of strengths there that the UK can put to good use. And obviously in the areas that people have mentioned already, innovation and tech and so on, where the UK is a leader, and where actually many countries in this region are also leading and score very well in the Global Innovation Index. There's room for a lot of synergies there. And of course, the Resilience and Recovery Fund from the EU, a lot of money is going into this region. I think that's really important for the medium long-term growth of the region. And I think the UK can also play a role in making sure that that money is well spent in areas where it's needed and on projects where it's needed. And the synergies are there. People have mentioned green, fintech, all sorts of areas where I think the UK can do an awful lot more than it has done in recent decades.
Well, do you know what? That's such a perfect point on which to end. We are so out of time, but I just wanted to thank you all. And we started with the elephant in the room, and we've ended on a very positive note. And I'm really taken by the initiatives that you're all working on and looking at, and just that the fact that we, it is a difficult time, as we keep saying, it's unprecedented, but the positivity and the forward thinking and looking forward and coming out of all of this and the willingness to build a relationship is inspiring, and let's keep that going. And we look forward to the relationship between the UK and emerging Europe in 2030. And I'd just like to thank again Andrew and the Emerging Europe team for bringing us together and enabling us to have this conversation. And my esteemed panel, thank you so much for your time and your invaluable comments.
Thank you very much to all of you for joining us today. And thanks for all the insights that you've shared with us. We've heard that the deal that the UK has with the European Union is a very good platform to work with, but there's still a lot of unclear things that we have to work out in order to have a relationship with the UK. And I'm talking about the emerging Europe region. We still don't know what or how the UK sees the emerging Europe region going forward. So still a lot of questions have remained unanswered. Now we are moving on to the second session. In the second session, we're going to focus on innovation and technology. And our key topic is actually fintech. So we've invited experts from London Tech Advocates and two interesting fintech companies, Corfi and Ondato, and they are going to join us in the next few minutes. The session will be moderated by Sam Burke, a business correspondent and a tech correspondent at CNN, and also an anchor at CNN.